Welcome back to the Talking ETV Book Club. We are still reading Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and we are on chapter 11. Chapter 11 is titled Quidditch. As they entered November, the weather turned very cold. The mountains around the school became icy gray and the lake like chilled steel. Every morning, the ground was covered in frost. Hagrid could be seen from the upstairs windows defrosting broomsticks on the Quidditch field, bundled up in a long moleskin overcoat, rabbit fur gloves, and enormous beaver skin boots. The Quidditch season had begun on Saturday. Harry would be playing in his first match after weeks of training, Gryffindor versus Slytherin. If Gryffindor won, they would move up into second place in the house championship. Hardly anyone had seen Harry play because Wood had decided that, as their secret weapon, Harry should be kept, well, secret. But the news that he was playing Seeker had leaked out somehow, and Harry didn't know which was worse, people telling him he'd be brilliant or people telling him they'd be running around underneath him holding a mattress. It was really lucky that Harry now had Hermione as a friend. He didn't know how he had gotten through all his homework without her, with all that last-minute Quidditch practice Wood was making him do. She had also lent him Quidditch Through the Ages, which turned out to be a very interesting read. Harry learned that there were 700 ways of committing a Quidditch foul and that all of them had happened during a World Cup match in 1473. That Seekers were usually the smallest and fastest players, and the most serious Quidditch accidents seemed to happen to them. That although people rarely died playing Quidditch, referees had been known to vanish and turn up months in the Sahara Desert. Could you imagine disappearing and popping up months later in the Sahara Desert? Like, I'm confused. Hermione had become a bit more relaxed about breaking rules since Harry and Ron had saved her from the mountain troll, and she was much nicer for it. The day before Harry's first Quidditch match, the three of them were out in the freezing courtyard during break, and she had conjured them up a bright blue fire that could be carried around in a jam jar. They were standing with their backs to it, getting warm, when Snape crossed the yard. Harry noticed at once that Snape was limping. Harry, Ron, and Hermione moved closer to block the fire from view. They were sure it wouldn't be allowed. Unfortunately, something about their guilty faces caught Snape's eye. He limped over. He hadn't seen the fire, but he seemed to be looking for a reason to tell them off anyway. "What's that you got there, Potter?" It was Quidditch Through the Ages, Harry showed him. "Library books are not to be taken outside the school," said Snape. "Give it to me. 5 points from Gryffindor." "He just made that rule up," Harry muttered angrily as Snape limped away. "Wonder what's wrong with his leg." "Dunno, but I hope it's really hurting him," said Ron bitterly. "Okay, 'cause fuck Snape. He's so annoying." But like, okay, so y'all, so far I'm liking the first book better than the first movie. Prisoner of Azkaban, the third one, is my favorite movie. So when I get to that book, we'll see how I feel. But to anybody that ain't finished all the Harry Potter movies, I'm gonna just say what I said the whole time when I was doing my reaction videos. Full uncut reaction videos are on talkingetv.com, by the way. But oh, and to anybody watching this on YouTube, this is a podcast. It's on Spotify and Apple, by the way. Not just the Talking ETV podcast, but the book club is on there too. But the entire time I was watching the Harry Potter movies, I was like, Snape is coming off so rude and so cruel, but I know for a fact it's more to this character. And then now that I finished the movies, I was like, oh yeah, baby, I was right. It was way more to him. And I just fucking knew it. But yeah, Snape, that's a whole nother conversation. The Gryffindor common room was very noisy that evening. Harry, Ron, and Hermione sat together next to a window. Hermione was checking Harry and Ron's charms homework for them. She would never let them copy. How will you learn? By asking her to read through it, they got the right answers anyway. Harry felt restless. He wanted Quidditch Through the Ages back to take his mind off his nerves about tomorrow. Why should he be afraid of Snape? Getting up, he told Ron and Hermione he was going to ask Snape if he could have it. "Better you than me," they said together. But Harry had an idea that Snape wouldn't refuse it if there were other teachers listening. He made his way to the staff room and knocked. There was no answer. He knocked again. Nothing. Perhaps Snape had left the book in there. It was worth a try. He pushed the door ajar and peered inside, and a horrible scene met his eyes. Snape and Filch were inside alone. Snape was holding his robes above his knees. One of his legs was bloody and mangled. Filch was handing Snape bandages. "Blasted thing," Snape was saying. How are you supposed to keep your eyes on all three heads at once? He's talking about the dog that's covering the Sorcerer's Stone, if y'all ain't put two and two together from the last chapter. Harry tried to shut the door quietly, but Potter! Snape's face was twisted with fury as he dropped his robes quickly to hide his leg. Harry gulped. I just wondered if I could have my book back. Get out! Out! Harry left before Snape could take any more points from Gryffindor. He sprinted back upstairs. Did you get it? Ron asked as Harry joined them. What's the matter? In a low whisper, Harry told them what he'd seen. You know what this means, he finished breathlessly. He tried to get past that three-headed dog at Halloween. That's where he was going when we saw him. He's after what it's guarding. And I bet my broomstick that he let that troll in to make a diversion. Hermione's eyes were wide. No, he wouldn't, she said. I know he's not very nice, but he wouldn't try to steal anything Dumbledore was keeping safe. Honestly, Hermione, you think all the teachers are saints or something? Snapped Ron. I'm with Harry. I wouldn't put anything past Snape. But what's he after? What's the dog guarding? Harry went to bed with his head buzzing with the same question. Neville was snoring loudly, but Harry couldn't sleep. Harry tried to empty his mind. He needed to sleep. He had to. He had his first Quidditch match in a few hours, but the expression on Snape's face when Harry had seen his leg wasn't easy to forget. The next morning dawned very bright and cold. The great hall was full of delicious smell of fried sausages and the cheerful chatter of everyone looking forward to a good Quidditch match. You've got to eat some breakfast. I don't want anything. Just a bit of toast, wailed Hermione. I'm not hungry. Harry felt terrible. In an hour's time, he'd be walking onto the field. Harry, you need your strength, said Seamus Finnegan. Seekers are always the ones who get clobbered by the other team. Thanks, Seamus, said Harry, watching Seamus Powell catch up on his sausages. By 11 o'clock, the whole school seemed to be out in the stands around the Quidditch pitch. Many students had binoculars. The seats might be raised high in the air, but it was still difficult to see what was going on sometimes. Ron and Hermione joined Neville, Seamus, and Dean, the West Ham fan, up in the top row. As a surprise for Harry, they had painted a large banner on one of the sheets Scabbers had ruined. It said, Potter for President, and Dean, who was good at drawing, had done a large Gryffindor lion underneath. Then Hermione had performed a tricky little charm so that the paint flashed different colors. Meanwhile, in the locker room, Harry and the rest of the team were changing into their scarlet Quidditch robes. Slytherin would be playing in green. Wood cleared his throat for silence. Okay, men, he said. And women, said Chaser Angelina Johnson. And women, Wood agreed. This is it. The big one, said Fred Weasley. The one we've all been waiting for, said George. We know Oliver's speech by heart, Fred told Harry. We were on the team last year. Shut up, you two, said Wood. This is the best team Gryffindor's had in years. We're going to win. I know it. He glared at them all as if to say, or else. Right. It's time. Good luck, all of you. Harry followed Fred and George out of the locker room and hoping his knees weren't going to give away. He walked onto the field to loud cheers. Madam Hooch was refereeing. She stood in the middle of the field for the two teams, her broom in her hand. Now, I want a nice fair game, all of you, she said once they were all gathered around her. Harry noticed that she seemed to be speaking particularly to the Slytherin captain, Marcus Flint, a fifth year. Damn, they do 5 years at Hogwarts. So he not a freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior. What the hell is a fifth year? How do the years work in Hogwarts, by the way? Tell me that in the comments, because y'all know I be premiering this on YouTube live in the chat, and I must know what a fifth year is. Because it's not like, obviously in America, it's freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. They have first years, second years, third years, fourth years, fifth years. Harry thought Flint looked as if he had some troll blood in him. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the fluttering banner high above, flashing Potter for president over the crowd. His heart skipped. He felt braver. Mount your brooms, please. Harry clambered onto his Nimbus 2000. Madam Hooch gave a loud blast on her silver whistle. 15 brooms rose up, high, high into the air. They were off, and the quaffle is taken immediately by Angelina Johnson of Gryffindor. What an excellent chaser that girl is, and rather attractive too. Jordan! Sorry, Professor. The Weasley twins' friends, Lee Jordan, was doing the commentary for the match, closely watched by Professor McGonagall. And she's really belting along up there. A neat pass to Alicia Spinner. A good find of Oliver Woods. Oh, cause he found her. Okay, I thought that was about to say friend. Okay. Last year only a reserve. Back to Johnson. And no, the Slytherins have taken the quaffle. Slytherin Captain Marcus Flint gains the quaffle and off he goes. Flint flying like an eagle up there. He's going to. No! Stopped by an excellent move by Gryffindor keeper Wood, and the Gryffindor takes the quaffle. That's Chaser Katie Bell of Gryffindor there. Nice dive around Flint. Off, up the field, and. Ouch. That must have hurt. Hit in the back of the head by a bludger. Quaffle taken by Slytherins. That's Adrian Pusey. Speeding off towards the goalpost, but he's blocked by a second bludger. Sent his way by Fred or George Weasley, can't tell which. Nice play by the Gryffindor beater. Anyway, and Johnson back in possession of the quaffle. A clear field ahead off she goes. She's really flying. Dodges a speeding bludger. The goalposts are ahead. Come on now. Angelina. Keeper Belch dives. Misses! Gryffindor score! Gryffindor cheers filled the cold air with howls and moans from the Slytherins. Budge up there. Move along. Hagrid! Ron and Hermione squeezed together to give Hagrid enough space to join them. Been watching from me hut, said Hagrid, patting a large pair of binoculars around his neck. But it isn't the same as being in the crowd. No sign of the sitch yet, eh? Nope, said Ron. Harry hasn't had much to do yet. Keep out of trouble, though. That's something, said Hagrid, raising his binoculars and peering skyward at the speck that was Harry. Way up above them, Harry was gliding over the game, squinting for some sign of the snitch. That was part of his and Wood's game plan. Keep out of the way until you catch sight of the snitch, Wood had said. We don't want you attacked before you have to be. When Angelina had scored, Harry done a couple of loop-the-loops to let off his feelings. Now he was back staring around for the snitch. Once he caught sight of a flash of gold, but it was just a reflection of one of the Weasleys' wristwatches. And once a bludger decided to come pelting his way, more like a cannonball than anything, but Harry dodged it and Fred Weasley came chasing after it. All right there, Harry! He had time to yell as he beat the bludger furiously toward Marcus Flint. Slytherin in possession, Lee Jordan was saying. Chaser Pusey ducks, 2 bludgers, 2 Weasleys, and Chaser Bell and speeds toward the... Wait a moment, was that the snitch? A murmur ran through the crowd as Adrian Pusey dropped the quaffle, too busy looking over his shoulder at the flash of gold that had passed his left ear. Harry saw it. In a great rush of excitement, he dived afterward, the streak of gold. Slytherin seeker Terrence Higgs had seen it too. Neck and neck, they hurtled toward the snitch. All the chasers seemed to have forgotten that they were supposed to be doing as they hung mid-air to watch. Harry was faster than Higgs, but he could see the little round ball wings fluttering, darting up ahead, and he put an extra spurt of speed. Wham! A roar echoed from the Gryffindors below Marcus Flint. Had blocked Harry on purpose, and Harry's broom spun off course, Harry holding on for dear life. Foul! Screamed the Gryffindors. Madam Hooch spoke angrily to Flint and then ordered a free shot at the goal post for Gryffindor. But in all the confusion, of course, the golden snitch had disappeared from sight again. Down in the stands, Dean Thomas was yelling, Send him off! Ref, red card! What are you talking about, Dean? Said Ron. Red card, said Dean furiously. In soccer, you get shown the red card when you're out of the game. But this isn't soccer, Dean, Ron reminded him. Hagrid, however, was on Dean's side. They ought to change the rules. Flint could have knocked Harry out of the air. Lee Jordan was finding it difficult not to take sides. So, after that obvious and disgusting bit of cheating, Jordan, growled Professor McGonagall. After that open and revolting foul. Jordan, I'm warning you. All right. Flint nearly kills the Gryffindor seeker, which could happen to anyone. I'm sure, so a penalty to Gryffindor taken by Spinnet, who puts it away, no trouble, and we continue to play. Gryffindor still in possession. It was as Harry dodged another bludger we went spinning dangerously past his head that had happened. His broom gave a sudden, frightening lurch. For a split second, he thought he was going to fall. He gripped the broom tightly with his hands and knees. He never felt anything like that. It happened again. It was as though the broom was trying to buck him off, but Nimbus 2000 then suddenly decided to buck their riders off. Harry tried to turn back toward the Gryffindor goalpost. He had half a mind to ask Wood to call a timeout, and then he realized that his broom was completely out of his control. He couldn't turn it. He couldn't direct it at all. It was a zigzagging through the air, every now and then making violent swishing movements that almost unseated him. Lee was still commentating. Slytherin in possession. Flint with the quaffle. Past the spinner, past his bell. Hit hard in the face by a bludger. Hope it broke his nose. Only joking. Professor Slytherin's score. Oh no. The Slytherins were cheering. No one seemed to have noticed that Harry's broom was behaving strangely. It was carrying him slowly higher away from the game, jerking and twitching as it went. Don't know what Harry thinks he's doing, Hagrid mumbled. He stared through his binoculars. If I didn't know any better, I'd say he's lost control of his broom. But he can't have. Suddenly, people were pointing up at Harry all over the stands. His broom had started to roll over and over with him on it, only managing to hold on. Then the whole crowd gasped. Harry's broom had given a wild jerk and Harry swung off it. He was now dangling from it, holding on with only one hand. Did something happen to it when Flitch blocked him? Seamus whispered. No, did something happen to it when Flint blocked him? Seamus whispered. Can't have, Hagrid said, his voice shaking. Can't nothing interfere with a broomstick except powerful dark magic. No kid could do that to a Nimbus 2000. At these words, Hermione seized Hagrid's binoculars, but instead of looking up at Harry, she started looking frantically at the crowd. What are you doing? Moaned Ron, gray-faced. I knew it, Hermione gasped. Snape, look. Ron grabbed the binoculars. Snape was in the middle of a stand opposite them, his eyes fixed on Harry, and he was muttering nonstop under his breath. He's doing something, jinxing the broom, said Hermione. What should we do? Leave it to me. Before Ron could say another word, Hermione had disappeared. Ron turned the binoculars back on Harry. His broom was vibrating so hard it was almost impossible for him to hang on much longer. The whole crowd was on its feet watching, terrified as the Weasleys flew up to try to pull Harry safely onto one of their brooms. But it was no good. Every time they got near him, the broom would jump higher still. They dropped lower and circled beneath him, obviously hoping to catch him if he fell. Marcus Flint seized the quaffle and scored 5 times without anyone noticing. Come on, Hermione, Ron muttered desperately. Hermione had fought her way across to the stand where Snape stood and was now racing to the row behind him. She didn't even stop to say sorry as she knocked Professor Quirrell head first into the row in front. Reaching Snape, she crouched down, pulled out her wand, and whispered a few well-chosen words. Bright blue flames shot from under her wand and onto the hem of Snape's robes. It took perhaps 30 seconds for Snape to realize what he was on fire. A sudden yelp told her she had done her job. Scooping the fire off of him into a little jar in her pocket, she scrambled back along the row. Snape would never know what had happened. It was enough. Up in the air, Harry was suddenly able to clamber back onto his broom. Neville, you can look, Ron said. Neville had been sobbing in the Hagrid's jacket for the last 5 minutes. Harry was speeding toward the ground when the crowd saw him clasp his hand into his mouth as he thought he was about to be sick. He hit the field on all fours, coughed, and something gold fell into his hand. I've got the snitch, he shouted, waving it above his head, and the game ended in complete confusion. He didn't catch it. He nearly swallowed it. Flint was still howling 20 minutes later, but it made no difference. Harry hadn't broken any rules, and Lee Jordan was still happily shouting the results. Gryffindor had won by 170 points to 60. Harry heard none of this, though. He was being made a cup of strong tea back in Hagrid's hut with Ron and Hermione. It was Snape, Ron was explaining. Hermione and I saw him. He was cursing your broomstick, muttering. He wouldn't take his eyes off you. Rubbish, said Hagrid, who hadn't heard a word of what had gone on next to him in the stands. Why would Snape do something like that? Harry, Ron, and Hermione looked at one another, wondering what to tell him. Harry decided on the truth. I found out something about him, he told Hagrid. He tried to get past that 3-headed dog on Halloween. It bit him. I think he was trying to steal whatever it's guarding. Hagrid dropped the teapot. How do you know about Fluffy? He said. Fluffy? Yeah, he's mine. Bought him off a Greek chappie I met in the pub last year. I lent him to Dumbledore to guard the... Yes, said Harry eagerly. Now don't ask me any more, he said gruffly. That's top secret, that is. But Snape's trying to steal it. Rubbish, said Hagrid again. Snape's a Hogwarts teacher. He'd do nothing of the sort. So why did he just try to kill Harry? Cried Hermione. The afternoon's events certainly seemed to have changed her mind about Snape. I know a jinx when I see one, Hagrid. I've read all about them. You've got to keep eye contact. And Snape wasn't blinking at all. I saw him. I'm telling you, you're wrong, said Hagrid hotly. I don't know why Harry's broom acted like that, but Snape wouldn't try and kill a student. Now listen to me, all 3 of you. You're meddling in things that don't concern you. It's dangerous. You forget that dog and you forget what it's guarding. That's been Professor Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel. Aha! Said Harry. So there's someone called Nicholas Flamel involved, is there? Hagrid looked furiously with himself. Chapter 12. The Mirror of Erised. What the hell do that say? Arised? I've never seen this word before. Is this a real word or is this made up for Harry Potter? The Mirror of Arised. Christmas was coming. One morning in mid-December, Hogwarts woke to find itself covered in several feet of snow. The lake froze solid, and the Weasley twins were punished for bewitching several snowballs so that they followed Quirrell around, bouncing off the back of his turban. The few owls that managed to battle their way through the stormy sky to deliver mail had to be nursed back to health by Hagrid before they could fly off again. No one could wait for the holiday to start. While the Gryffindor common room and the Great Hall had roaring fires, the drafty corridors had become icy, and a bitter wind rattled the windows in the classroom. Worst of all were Professor Snape's classes down in the dungeons, where their breath rose in a mist before them, and they kept as close as possible to their hot cauldrons. "I do feel so sorry," said Draco Malfoy one potions class, "for all those people who have to stay at Hogwarts for Christmas because they're not wanted at home." Now y'all know he talking shit because y'all know Harry ain't got no nice home to go to. Fuck Malfoy. He was looking over at Harry as he spoke. Crabbe and Goyle chuckled. Harry, who was measuring out powdered spine of lionfish, ignored them. Malfoy had been even more unpleasant than usual since the Quidditch match. Disgusted that the Slytherins had lost, he had tried to get everyone laughing at how wide-mouthed Tree Frog would be replacing Harry as Seeker next. Then he realized that nobody found this funny, because they were all so impressed at the way Harry had managed to stay on his bucking broomstick. So Malfoy, jealous and angry, had gone back to taunting Harry about having no proper family. It was true that Harry wasn't going back to Privet Drive for Christmas. Professor McGonagall had come around the week before making a list of students who would be staying for the holidays, and Harry had signed up at once. He didn't feel sorry for himself at all. This would probably be the best Christmas he'd ever had. Ron and his brothers were staying too because Mr. and Mrs. Weasley were going to Romania to visit Charlie. When they left the dungeons at the end of potions, they found a large fir tree blocking the corridor ahead. Two enormous feet sticking out at the bottom, and a loud puffing sound told them Hagrid was behind it. "Hi, Hagrid. Want any help?" asked Ron, sticking his head through the branches. "No, I'm all right. Thanks, Ron." "Would you mind moving out of the way?" came Malfoy's cold drawl from behind them. "Are you trying to earn some extra money, Weasley? Hoping to be gameskeeper yourself when you leave Hogwarts?" "I suppose. The head of Hagrid's must seem like a palace compared to what your family's used to." Y'all, okay, let me tell y'all something. The disrespect. Why do Harry keep letting this nigga talk to him like that? Like, it's like, first of all, you know Malfoy not gonna swing. He's talking shit because you allow him. Slap the shit out of him. Because that's why he keep playing with you. If you smack the shit out of Malfoy, he will leave you the fuck alone, Harry. Sometimes niggas need to be smacked, okay? Ron dived at Malfoy just as Snape came up the stairs. "Weasley!" Ron let go of the front of Malfoy's robes. "He was provoked, Professor Snape," said Hagrid, sticking his huge hairy face out from behind the tree. "Malfoy was insulting his family." "Be that as it may." Look, hold on, let me try to do my Snape voice. "Be that as it may, fighting is against Hogwarts rules, Hagrid," said Snape silkily. 5 points from Gryffindor. Weasley, be grateful it isn't more. Move along, all of you. Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle pushed roughly past the tree, scattering needles everywhere and smirking. "I'll get him," said Ron, grinding his teeth at Malfoy's back. "One of these days, I'll get him." "I hate them both," said Harry, Malfoy and Snape. "Come on, cheer up. It's nearly Christmas," said Hagrid. "Tell you what, come in with me and see Great Hall. Looks a treat." So the three of them followed Hagrid and his tree off to the Great Hall, where Professor McGonagall and Professor Flitwick were busy with the Christmas decorations. "Ah, Hagrid, the last three. Put it in the far corner, would you?" The hall looked spectacular. Festoons of holly and mistletoe hung all around the walls, and no less than 12 towering Christmas trees stood around the room, some sparkling with tiny icicles, some glittering with hundreds of candles. "How many days you got left to your holidays?" Hagrid asked. "Just one," said Hermione. And that reminds me, Harry, Ron, we've got half an hour before lunch. We should be in the library. Oh, yeah, you're right, said Ron, tearing his eyes away from Professor Flitwick, who had golden bubbles blossoming out of his wand. It was trailing them over the branches of the new tree. The library? Said Hagrid, following them out of the hall. Just before the holidays. Bit keen, aren't you? Oh, we're not working, Harry told him brightly. Ever since you met these kids are something else. Ever since you mentioned, ever since you mentioned Nicholas Flamel, we've been trying to find out who he is. I love how they just keep it a stack with Hagrid. Like Hagrid is the one adult that they always tell what's going on. Like one thing about these kids, they gonna tell Hagrid. And like y'all know that I said in my literally the first Harry Potter movie, in my reaction, I was like, Hagrid is Unc. Like it just ain't no way around it. You what? Hagrid looked shocked. Listen here, I've told you, drop it. It's nothing It's nothing to you with that dog's garden. We just want to know who Nicholas Flamel is. That's all, said Hermione. Unless you'd like to tell us and save us the trouble, Harry added. Must have been through hundreds of books already and we can't find him anywhere. Just give us a hint. I know I've read his name somewhere. I'm saying nothing, said Hagrid flatly. Just have to find out for yourselves then. For ourselves then, said Ron, and they left Hagrid looking disgruntled and hurried off to the library. They had indeed been searching they had indeed been searching books for Flamels. I'm telling y'all something. Flamel. Like, you literally got to enunciate. Like, and the way my regular accent is set up, Flamel, like, when you're reading, like, you got to say Fla. You damn near got to say it in their accent. Nicholas Flamel. Like, every time I see that name, I'm finna start saying it like how Hermione said it in the movies. They had indeed been searching books for Flamel, name ever since Hagrid had let it slip. Because how else were they going to find out what Snape was trying to steal? The trouble was, it was to find out what Snape. No, the trouble was, it was very hard to know where to begin. Not knowing what Flamel might have done to get himself into a book, he wasn't in Great Wizards of the 20th Century or Notable Magical Names of Our Time. He was missing, too, from Important Modern Magical Discoveries and a study of recent developments in wizardry. And then, of course, there was the sheer size of the library, tens of thousands of books on thousands of shelves, hundreds of narrow rows. Hermione took out a list of subjects and titles she had decided to search while Ron strode off down a row of books and stared, pulling them off the shelves at random. Harry wandered over to the restricted section. He had been wondering for a while if Flamel wasn't somewhere in there. Unfortunately, you needed a specially signed note from one of the teachers to look at any of the restricted books, and he knew he'd never get one. There was the books containing powerful dark magic never taught at Hogwarts, and only read by older students studying advanced defense against the dark arts. What are you looking for, boy? Nothing, said Harry. Madam Pince, the librarian, brandished a feather duster at him. You'd better get out then. Go on. Out. Wishing he'd been a bit quicker at thinking up some story, Harry left the library. He, Ron, and Hermione had already agreed that they better not ask Madame Pince where they could find Flamel. They were sure she'd be able to tell them, but they couldn't risk Snape hearing what they were up to. Harry waited outside in the corridor to see if the other two had found anything, but he wasn't very hopeful. They had been looking for 2 weeks, after all, but as they only had odd moments between lessons, it wasn't surprising they hadn't found anything. What they really needed was a nice long search without Madame Pince breathing down their necks. 5 minutes later, Ron and Hermione joined him, shaking their heads. They went off to lunch. You will keep looking while I'm away, won't you? Said Hermione. And send me an owl if you find anything. And you could ask your parents if they know who Flamel is, said Ron. It'd be safe to ask them. Very safe, as they're both dentists, said Hermione. Once the holidays started, Ron and Harry were having too good a time to think much about Flamel. They had dormitory to themselves, and the common room was far emptier than usual, so they were able to get the good armchairs by the fire. They sat by the hour eating anything they could spare on a toasting fork. Bread, English muffins, marshmallows, and plotting ways of getting Malfoy expelled, which were fun to talk about even if they wouldn't work. Ron also started teaching Harry wizard chess. This was exactly like Muggle chess, except the figures were alive, which made it a lot like directing troops in a battle. Ron's set was very old and battered, like everything else he owned. It had once belonged to someone else in his family, in this case, his grandfather. However, old chessmen weren't a drawback at all. Ron knew them so well he never had trouble getting them to do whatever he wanted. Harry played with the chessmen Seamus Finnegan had lent him, and they didn't trust him at all. He wasn't a very good player yet, and they kept shouting different bits of advice at him, which was confusing. Don't send me there! Can't you see his knight? Send him. We can afford to lose him. Y'all, they didn't play wizard's chess in the movies that I remember as far as sitting down and just playing a game. I do remember at the end of one of the movies when they were playing like that big life-size chess with all the shit that was going on. Does that count as the wizard's chest out of the book? That big huge scene they had at the end of one of the movies. I can't remember which one it was off the top of my head. On Christmas Eve, Harry went to bed looking forward to the next day for the food and the fun, but not expecting any presents at all. When he woke early in the morning, however, the first thing he saw was a small pile of packages at the foot of his bed. Merry Christmas, said Ron sleepily as Harry scrambled out of bed and pulled on his bathrobe. You too, said Harry. Will you look at this? I've got some presents. What did you expect, turnips? Said Ron, turning to his own pile, which was a lot bigger than Harry's. Harry picked up the top parcel. It was wrapped in thick brown paper, and scrawled across it was to Harry from Hagrid. Inside was a roughly cut wooden flute. Hagrid had obviously whittled it himself. Harry blew it. It sounded a bit like an owl. A second, very small parcel contained a note. We received your message and enclosed your Christmas present from Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia. Taped to the note was a 50-pence piece. Okay, honestly, for the Dursleys, that's a big deal. Pence is their like change, right? In the UK, they sent Harry 50 cents. That's friendly, said Harry. Ron was fascinated by the 50 pence. Weird, he said. What a shape. This is money? You can keep it, said Harry, laughing at how pleased Ron was. Okay, yes, so clearly Ron is not used to seeing money. Hagrid and my aunt and uncle. So who sent these? I think I know who that one's from, said Ron, turning a bit pink and pointing at a very lumpy parcel. My mum. I told her you didn't expect any presents and... Oh no, he groaned. She's made you a Weasley sweater. First of all, that is so fucking cute. Y'all gonna quit playing with these Weasleys like that's not the sweetest shit ever. The Weasleys are the number one family unit in the Harry Potter universe. And that's just that on that. Y'all know we love the Weasleys over here. Harry had torn open the parcel to find a thick, hand-knitted sweater in emerald green and a large box of homemade fudge. Let me tell you something. If somebody knitted me a fucking sweater and sent that in the mail with a box of fudge that they made, stop it. That's love. That's love. Every year she makes us a sweater, said Ron, unwrapping his own. And mine's always maroon. That's really nice of her, said Harry, trying the fudge, which was very tasty. His next present also contained candy, a large box of chocolate frogs from Hermione. Oh, the chocolate frogs. I love that. This only left one parcel. Harry picked it up and felt it. It was very light. He unwrapped it. Something fluid and silvery gray went slithering to the floor where it lay in gleaming folds. Ron gasped. I've heard of those, he said in a hushed voice, dropping the box of every flavor beans he'd gotten from Hermione. If that's what I think it is, they're really rare and really valuable. Oh my God, I'm covering it up. Y'all, I think this is going to be like his invisibility cloak. This gotta be what it is, right? Okay, let me see. What is it? Harry picked the shining silvery cloth off the floor. It was strange to the touch, like water woven into material. It's an invisibility cloak, said Ron. Don't play with me. A look of awe on his face. I'm sure it is. Try it on. Harry threw the cloak around his shoulders and Ron gave a yell. It is! Look down! Harry looked down at his feet, but they were gone. He dashed to the mirror. Sure enough, his reflection looked back at him. Just his head suspended in mid-air, his body completely invisible. He pulled the cloak over his head and his reflection vanished completely. There's a note, said Ron suddenly. A note fell out of it. Harry pulled off the cloak and seized the letter. Written in narrow, loopy writing he had never seen before were the following words: Your father left this in my possession before he died. It is time it was returned to you. Use it well. A very Merry Christmas to you. Shout out to whoever sent this invisibility cloak to Harry, because even after watching all 8 movies and the Return to Hogwarts special, I have absolutely no idea who sent it to Harry. So please tell me in the comments. There was no signature. Harry stared at the note. Ron was admiring the cloak. I'd give anything for one of those, he said. Anything? What's the matter? Nothing, said Harry. He felt very strange. Who had sent the cloak? Had it really once belonged to his father? Before he could say or think anything else, the dormitory door flung open and Fred and George Weasley bounded in. Harry stuffed the cloak quickly out of sight. He didn't feel like sharing it with anyone else yet. Merry Christmas! Hey, look, Harry's got a Weasley sweater too. Fred and George were wearing blue sweaters, one with a one with a large yellow F on it, the other with a G. Harry's is better than ours, though, said Fred, holding up Harry's sweater. She obviously makes more of an effort if you're not family. Why aren't you wearing yours, Ron? George demanded. Come on, get it on. They're lovely and warm. I hate maroon, Ron moaned half-heartedly as he pulled it over his head. You've gotten a letter on yours, George observed. You haven't got a letter on yours, George observed. I suppose she thinks you don't forget your name, but we're not stupid. We know we're called Fred and George. Wait, this is so funny. I suppose she thinks you don't forget your name, but we're not stupid. We know we're called Gred and Forge. I'm telling y'all, I love the Weasley twins. What's all this noise? Percy Weasley stuck his head through the door, looking disapproving. He had clearly gotten halfway through unwrapping his presents as he, too, carried a lumpy sweater over his arm, which Fred seized. P for perfect. Get it on, Percy. Come on. We're all wearing ours. Even Harry got one. I don't want, said Percy thickly as the twins forced the sweater over his head, knocking his glasses askew. And you're not sitting with the prefects today either, said George. Christmas is a time for family. They frog-marched Percy from the room, his arm pinned to his side by his sweater. Harry had never, in all his life, had such a Christmas dinner. 100 fat roast turkeys, mountains of roast and boiled potatoes, platters of chipolatas. Y'all, what the fuck is a chipolata? CHIPO, chipo, LATAS, latas, chipolatas. But no Spanish accent. This is Harry Potter. So what is a chipolata? Tureens of buttered peas, silver boats of thick, rich gravy and cranberry sauce, and stacks of wizard crackers. What is a wizard cracker? I'm finna literally be looking all of this up while I'm live in the chat when this video premieres, because I ain't never heard of a wizard cracker. I don't think they said that one time in the movies. Correct me if I'm wrong. Every few feet along the table, these fantastic party favors were nothing like the feeble muggle ones the Dursleys usually bought, with their little plastic toys and their flimsy paper hats inside. Harry pulled a wizard cracker with Fred, and it didn't just bang. It went off with a blast like a cannon and engulfed them all in a cloud of blue smoke. While inside exploded a rear admiral's hat and several live white mice. Wait a minute. What the hell? So they don't actually eat wizard crackers. Let me see. These fantastic party favors were nothing like the feeble muggle ones the Dursleys usually bought, with their little plastic toys and their flimsy paper hats inside. Harry pulled a wizard cracker with Fred, and it didn't just bang. It went off with a blast like a cannon and engulfed them all in a cloud of blue smoke, while from the inside exploded a rear admiral's hat and several live white mice. The last thing I want to be doing at the dinner table, y'all, is sitting there with this big ass spread of food and white mice are popping up out of the fucking crackers. Y'all, what the hell going on? Up at the high table, Dumbledore had swapped his pointed wizard's hat for a flowered bonnet, and he was chuckling merrily at the joke Professor Flitwick had just read him. Flaming Christmas puddings followed the turkey. Percy nearly broke his teeth on the silver sickle embedded in his slice. Ouch. Don't lose a tooth, Percy. Damn. Harry watched Hagrid get redder and redder in the face as he called for more wine, finally kissing Professor McGonagall on the cheek, who, to Harry's amazement, giggled and blushed. Her top hat lopsided. Let me tell y'all something. I keep saying this and I'm gonna keep saying it. Hagrid loved him a drink. Hagrid loves a beverage. He loves a beverage. When Harry finally left the table, he was laden down with a stack of things out of the crackers, including a pack of non-explodable luminous balloons and a grow your own warts kit and his own new wizard chess set. See, now Harry got his own set. I love that. The white mice had disappeared, and Harry had a nasty feeling they were going to end up at Mrs. Norris' Christmas dinner. Mrs. Norris. Mrs. Norris is I'm trying so hard not to call this man Walder Frey. What is his name in Harry Potter? The man with the cat, y'all. Mrs. Norris is the cat. Y'all, what's that man's name? I'm so sorry. I know y'all gonna tell me in the comments. I'm still so traumatized from Game of Thrones. I keep calling this man Walder Frey. I know his name when I hear it, but I just can't think of it. The white mice had disappeared, and Harry had a nasty feeling they were going to end up as Mrs. Norris's Christmas dinner. Harry and the Weasleys spent a happy afternoon having a furious snowball fight on the grounds. Then, cold, wet, and gasping for breath, they returned to the fire in the Gryffindor common room, where Harry had broken his new chess set by losing spectacularly to Ron. He suspected he wouldn't have lost so badly if Percy hadn't tried to help him so much. After a meal of turkey sandwiches, crumpets, trifle, and Christmas cake, everyone felt too full and sleepy to do much before bed except sit and watch Percy chase Fred and George all over the Gryffindor Tower because they'd stolen his prefect badge. It had been Harry's best Christmas day ever, yet something had been nagging at the back of his mind all day. Not until he climbed into bed was he free to think about it. The invisibility cloak and whoever had sent it. Ron, full of turkey and cake, and with nothing mysterious to bother him, fell asleep almost as soon as he'd drawn the curtains of his four-poster. Oh, four-poster is in the bed. Four posts. I've never heard that type of bed be described as a four-poster. Harry leaned over to the side of his own bed and pulled the cloak out from under it. His father's. This had been his father's. He let the material flow over his hands, smoother than silk, light as air. Use it well, the note had said. He had to try it now. He slipped out of bed and wrapped the cloak around himself. Looking down at his legs, he only saw moonlight and shadows. It was a very funny feeling. Use it well. Suddenly, Harry felt wide awake. The whole of Hogwarts was open to him in his cloak. Excitement flooded through him as he stood there in the dark and silence. He could go anywhere in this. Anywhere. And Filch would never know. Ron grunted in his sleep. Should Harry wake him? Something held him back. His father's cloak. He felt that this time, the first time, he wanted to use it alone. He crept out of the dormitory, down the stairs, across the common room, and climbed through the portrait hole. "Who's there?" squawked the fat lady. Harry said nothing. He walked quickly down the corridor. Where should he go? He stopped, his heart racing in thought, and then it came to him, the restricted section in the library. He'd be able to read as long as he'd like, as long as it took to find out who Flamel was. He set off, drawing the invisibility cloak tight around him as he walked. The library was pitch black and very eerie. Harry lit a lamp to see his way along the rows of books. The lamp looked as if it was floating along in midair, and even though Harry could feel his arm supporting it, the sight gave him the creeps. The restricted section was right at the back of the library. Stepping carefully over the rope that separated these books from the rest of the library, he held up his lamp to read the titles. They didn't tell him much, their peeling, faded gold letters spelling words in languages Harry couldn't understand. Some had no title at all. One book had a dark stain on it that looked horribly like blood. The hairs on the back of Harry's neck prickled. Maybe he was imagining it. Maybe not. But he thought a faint whispering was coming from the books, as though they knew someone there who shouldn't be, as they knew someone was there who shouldn't be. He had to start somewhere. Setting the lamp down carefully on the floor, he looked along the bottom shelf for an interesting-looking book. A large black and silver volume caught his eye. He pulled it out with difficulty because it was very heavy, and balancing it on his knee, let it fall open. A piercing, blood-curdling shriek split the silence. Okay, I remember this from the movies. That's that hollering ass book doing all that damn hollering. The book was screaming. Harry snapped it shut, but the shrink went on, one high, unbroken, ear-splitting note. He stumbled backward and knocked over his lamp, which went out at once. Panicking, he heard footsteps coming down the corridor outside. Stuffing the shrieking book back on the shelf, he ran for it. He passed Filch in the doorway. Filch's pale, wild eyes looked straight through him, and Harry slipped under Filch's outstretched arm and streaked off up the corridor, the book's shriek still ringing in his ears. He came to a sudden halt in front of a tall suit of armor. He had been so busy getting away from the library, he hadn't paid attention to where he was going. Perhaps because it was dark, he didn't recognize where he was at all. There was a suit of armor near the kitchens, but he knew he must be 5 floors above there. You asked me to come directly to you, Professor, if anyone was wandering around at night, and somebody's been in the library. Restricted section. Harry felt the blood drain out of his face. Wherever he was, Filch must know a shortcut because his soft, greasy voice was getting nearer and nearer. To his horror, it was Snape who replied, "The restricted section. Well, they can't be far. We'll catch them." Harry stood rooted to the spot as Filch and Snape came around the corner ahead. They couldn't see him, but, of course, it was a narrow corridor, and if they had came much nearer, they'd knock right into him. The cloak didn't stop him from being solid. He backed away as quietly as he could. A door stood ajar to his left. It was his only hope. He squeezed through it, holding his breath, trying not to move it, and to his relief, he managed to get inside the room without their noticing anything. They walked straight past, and Harry leaned against the wall, breathing deeply, listening to their footsteps dying away. That had been close, very close. It was a few seconds before he noticed anything about the room he had hidden in. It looked like an unused classroom. The dark shapes of desks and chairs were piled against the walls, and there was an upturned wastepaper basket. But propped against the wall facing him was something that didn't look like as if it belonged there. Something that looked as if someone had just put it there to keep it out of the way. It was a magnificent mirror, as high as the ceiling, with an ornate gold frame, standing on 2 clawed feet. There was an inscription carved around the top. Arise, stra ebru. Oh, this is not English, y'all. I don't know how to say this. Arise, stra eru ot ube kafru ot wosi. Yeah, I have no idea what the hell that say. His panic fading now that there was no sound of Filch and Snape, Harry moved nearer to the mirror, wanting to look at himself, but see no reflection again. He stepped in front of it. He had to clasp his hands to his mouth to stop himself from screaming. He whirled around. His heart was pounding for more. His heart was pounding far more furiously than when the book had screamed. For he had seen not only himself in the mirror, but a whole crowd of people standing right behind him. But the room was empty. Breathing very fast, he turned slowly back to the mirror. There he was, reflected in it. White and scared looking, and the reflection behind him were the least 10 others. Harry looked over his shoulder, but still no one was there. Or were they all invisible to? Was he in fact in a room full of invisible people, and this mirror's trick is that it reflected them, invisible or not? He looked in the mirror again. A woman standing right behind his reflection was smiling at him and waving. He reached out a hand and felt the air behind him, as if she was really there. And she and the others existed only in the mirror. That's how y'all know I'm getting a little sleepy. I'm finna hurry up and finish this. I usually do 2 chapters at a time, to be fair, so this is right on par with what we've been doing. She was a very pretty woman. She had dark red hair and her eyes. Her eyes are just like mine, Harry thought, edging a little closer to the glass. Bright green, exactly the same shape, but then he noticed that she was crying, smiling, but crying at the same time. The tall, thin, black-haired man standing next to her put his arm around her. He wore glasses, and his hair was very untidy. It stuck up in the back just as Harry's did. He was so close to the mirror now that his nose was nearly touching that of his reflection. "Mom?" he whispered. "Dad?" They just looked at him, smiling. And slowly, Harry looked into the faces of the other people in the mirror, and he saw other pairs of green eyes like this. other noses like this, even the little old man who looked as though he had Harry's knobbly knees. Harry was looking at his family for the first time in his life. The Potter smiled and waved at Harry, and he stared hungrily back at them. His hands pressed flat against the glass as though he was hoping to fall through it and reach them. He had a powerful kind of ache inside of him, half joy, half terrible sadness. How long he stood there, he didn't know. The reflections did not fade, and he looked until a distant noise brought him back to his senses. He couldn't stay here. He had to find his way back to bed. He tore his eyes away from his mother's face, whispering, "I'll come back," and hurried from the room. "You could have woken me up," Ron said crossly. "You can come tonight. I'm going back. I want to show you the mirror." "I like to see your mom and dad," Ron said eagerly. "And I want to see all of your family, all the Weasleys. You'd be able to show your brothers and everyone." "You can see them any old time," said Ron. "Just come around my house this summer. Anyways, maybe it only shows dead people." "Shame about not finding Flamel, though. Have some bacon or something. Why aren't you eating anything?" Harry couldn't eat. He had seen his parents and would be seeing them again tonight. He had almost forgotten about Flamel. It didn't seem very important anymore. Who cares what the three-headed dog was guarding? What did it matter if Snape stole it? Really? "Are you all right?" said Ron. "You look odd." What Harry feared most was that he might not be able to find the mirror room again. With Ron covered in the cloak too, they had to walk much more slowly the next night. They tried retracting Harry's route from the library, wandering around the dark passageways for nearly an hour. "I'm freezing," said Ron. "Let's forget it and go back." "No," Harry hissed. "I know it's here somewhere." They passed the ghost of a tall witch gliding in the opposite direction, but saw no one else. Just as Ron started moaning that his feet hurt, were dead and cold. Just as Ron started moaning that his feet were dead with cold, Harry spotted the suit of armor. "It's here, just here, yes." They pushed the door open. Harry dropped the cloak from around his shoulders and ran to the mirror. "First of all, Harry, why don't you hold your blanket for somebody to come pick that bitch up and run away with it, okay?" There they were. His mother and father beamed at the sight of him. "See?" Harry whispered. "I can't see anything." Look at them all. There are loads of them." "I can only see you." "Look at it properly. Go on, stand where I am." Harry stepped aside, but with Ron in front of the mirror, he couldn't see his family anymore. Just Ron in his paisley pajamas. Ron, though, was staring transfixed at his image. "Look at me," he said. "Can you see all your family standing around you?" "No, I'm alone. But I'm different. I look older. And I'm head boy." "What?" "I am. I'm wearing the badge like Bill used to, and I'm holding the house cup and the Quidditch cup. I'm Quidditch captain, too." Ron tore his eyes away from the splendid sight to look excitedly at Harry. "Do you think this mirror shows the future?" I don't think it shows the future. I think, if I remember correctly, the the mirror shows what you want most in the world, I believe. "How can it? All my family are dead. Let me have another look." "You had it to yourself all last night. Give me a bit more time." "You're only holding the Quidditch cup. What's interesting about that? I want to see my parents." "Don't push me." A sudden noise outside the corridor put an end to their discussion. They hadn't realized how loudly they'd been talking. "Quick." Ron threw the cloak back over them as the luminous eyes of Mrs. Norris came around the corner. Ron and Harry stood quite still, both thinking the same thing. Did the cloak work on cats? After what seemed an age, she turned and left. "This isn't safe. She might have gone for Filch. I bet she heard us. Come on." And Ron pulled Harry out of the room. The snow still hadn't melted the next morning. "Want to play chess, Harry?" said Ron. "No." "Why don't we go down and visit Hagrid?" "No. You go." "I know what you're thinking about, Harry. That mirror. Don't go back tonight." "Why not?" "I don't know. I've just got a bad feeling about it. And anyway, you've had too many close shaves already. Filch, Snape, and Mrs. Norris are wandering around. So what if they can't see you? What if they walk into you? What if you knock something over?" "You sound like Hermione." I'm serious, Harry. Don't go. But Harry only had one thought in his head, which was to get back in front of the mirror, and Ron wasn't going to stop him. The third night, he found his way more quickly than before. He was walking so fast he knew he was making more noise than was wise, but he didn't meet anyone. And there were his mother and father smiling at him again, and one of his grandfathers nodding happily. Harry sank down to sit on the floor in front of the mirror. There was nothing to stop him from staying here all night with his family. Nothing at all. So, back again, Harry. Harry felt as though his insides had turned to ice. He looked behind him. Sitting on one of the desks by the wall was none other than Albus Dumbledore. Harry must have walked straight past him, so desperate to get to the mirror he hadn't noticed him. I didn't see you, sir. Strange how nearsighted being invisible can make you, said Dumbledore. And Harry was relieved to see that he was smiling. So, said Dumbledore, slipping off the desk to sit on the floor with Harry. You, like hundreds before you, have discovered the lights of the Mirror of Erased. I didn't know it was called that, sir. But I expect you realize that by now what it does. It shows me my family. And it showed your friend Ron himself as head boy. How did you know? I don't need a cloak to become invisible, said Dumbledore. Now, can you think of the Mirror of Erased shows us at all? Harry shook his head. Let me explain. The happiest man on earth would be able to use the Mirror of Erased like a normal mirror. That is, he would look into it and see himself exactly as he is. Does that help? Harry thought, and then he slowly. It shows us what we want, whatever we want. Yes and no, said Dumbledore quietly. It shows us nothing more or less than the deepest, most desperate desires of our heart. Okay, there we go, y'all. I figured I remember what it was. I knew I was close. You, who have never known your family, see them standing around you. Ron Weasley, who has always been overshadowed by his brothers, sees himself standing alone, the best of all of them. However, this mirror will give us knowledge or truth. Men have wasted away before it, entranced by what they see, or driven mad, not knowing what it shows is real or even possible. The mirror will be moved to a new home tomorrow, Harry. And I ask you not to go looking for it again. If you ever do run across it, you will now be prepared. It does not good to dwell on dreams and to forget to live. Remember that. Now why don't you put that admirable cloak back on and go off to bed? Harry stood up. Sir, Professor Dumbledore, can I ask you something? Obviously. You've just done so, Dumbledore smirked. You may ask me one more thing, however. What do you see when you look in the mirror? I see myself holding a pair of thick woolen socks. Harry stared. One can never have enough socks, said Dumbledore. Another Christmas has come and gone, and I didn't get a single pair. People will insist on giving me books. I mean, you're Dumbledore. People are getting you books. Like, come on now. That's like the perfect gift. It was only when he was back in bed that it struck Harry that Dumbledore might not have been quite truthful. But then he thought, as he shoved Scabbers off his pillow, fuck Scabbers. Every time I see Scabbers' name, that's what I've been thinking. But then he thought, as he shoved Scabbers off his pillow, it had been quite a personal question. And that was chapters 11 and 12 of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. The books is really good. I ain't gonna lie to y'all. The books are really, really, really good. I have zero complaints. And I told y'all, I'm with the book club every Monday. Like, it's the consistency. Not playing no games. See y'all next week on Monday again.